Welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is part of Sociology of Health course. Today, I will be talking about birth of the clinic, a module which is part of theoretical perspectives in Sociology of Health. The purpose of this module is to introduce to the students a classic or a classical text written by a French philosopher, historian and a theorist called Birth of the Clinic. The objectives of this module are, apart from introducing the classical text to the students, it also delineates the relation between knowledge and power. It explains how medical science in the 19th century evolved and what is the distinction between the 18th century medicine and that of the 19th century medicine. Let me begin by telling you that the modern medicine, which is today dominant across the world, is only a few hundreds of years. It is only after industrial revolution that 19th century medicine actually came into existence. So, we are not talking about the earliest forms of medicine like Ayurveda, Siddha, Chinese medicine, Greek medicine or Egyptian medicine. No, we are talking about the Western allopathic medicine which emerged in the 19th century. If you go back and look at the antecedents of it, that is 18th century, how was its form, how knowledge actually was produced in the 18th century in Europe is very important. Michel Foucault, who wrote this book, did not write the history of modern medicine. No, he in fact says very clearly that his purpose was not to delineate the entire history of modern medicine. His purpose was to give a kind of explanation about how a institution called clinic came into existence and how the relation between a doctor and a patient actually emerged. So, when you look back in the 18th century France, he says it is interesting that 18th century medicine actually was very grounded. It was available, the knowledge actually was available for all categories of people. What do we mean? I am simply saying that Foucault narrates in 18th century, anyone in a town or in a countryside is eligible to apply in the council that he or she is interested in learning medicine. So, the person with knowledge in physics, astronomy, geography or in history, economics, all of them were eligible to actually practice medicine, provided they go register in a council that they are interested in learning medicine. So, that is one of the distinctive features of 18th century medicine, that it was very diverse. They understood the materials in the physical and the social world more deeply, and their understanding of knowledge between the body and society was much deeply entrenched. In fact, Foucault says that the distinctive feature of the 18th century medicine was like an artist who actually is preparing a kind of a painting, who is very sensitive to every minute detail to record, observe, explain and then understand that knowledge system. and that was what was the 18th century medical doctor. So, Foucault goes on to describe how this medical system actually prevailed in France, and so he says that it's very pertinent for us that in France the political parties actually had a lot of debate in terms of whether state should actually support the hospitals, okay. And in the 18th century hospitals actually came only for those sick people who did not have family, their natural caregiving kind of a community. So, it was believed that a sick person actually would be nurtured, understood, and his suffering would be empathetically received by his immediate kind of a family members and his own community. And therefore, they thought that the natural place for any sick person to be is either the family or community. So, the question came, what happens to those people who do not have family, who are destitutes, who have certain diseases that are contagious and spreading? And then the idea of hospital came into the discussion. And therefore, as a pilot project, the France state where this idea of hospital was actually propagated by a political party in France called Mountain, the extremist political party, which said that it is the responsibility and obligation of the state to provide the treatment free of cost to every citizen. Okay. So, in that sense, the way the community houses of the sick, family, and then you have a hospital. Okay. So, later on when there were actually epidemics, some chronic diseases, people who are not able to actually get adequate care in their own community settings actually were brought into the hospital settings. Okay. In fact, church played a very important role in actually running the community houses for the sick, and the natural caregivers were of course the immediate family members. Okay. This pilot project, which started in France, actually failed after a point of time because of certain social and political kind of reasons. The reasons were that the funds were actually diverted not to just the hospitals, the money allocated for medical assistance and relief was utilized for different purposes. And therefore, in the parliament the questions came whether state or the government should support these hospitals or it should be abandoned. Okay. So, this was the kind of discussion that was seen in the 18th century. In terms of knowledge production, a diverse kind of qualified, competent kind of people were eligible, and it was believed that they need to share knowledge. Secrecy was not actually practiced, but every knowledge that they gain through the anatomical kind of body need to be shared widely with the peer kind of medical doctors and professionals. That was the purpose. So, in fact, there was a lot of debate whether that kind of adequate dissemination of knowledge was taking place between North France and Southern France, because it was believed that one being a little mountainous area had different set of diseases where the treatment and bodily kind of ailments were different. Okay. So, knowledge was shared, it was practiced by different set of people. They gave importance to the immediate environment in which human beings inhabit, and the state actually believed that it is the community and home which is the natural place for the sick people to be nurtured. Now, Michael Foucault comes here and says that how did this professionalization of medical knowledge take place, and when did it take place, how did it take place? This is what is Birth of the Clinic actually talks about. Okay, what did Michael Foucault talk about 19th century medicine? Okay. Said the very fact that the clinic actually came into existence because of certain processes that actually came into being. Okay. He uses concepts. I think in the module I talk about all these concepts. He uses biopower, visible and invisible, signifier and signified, governmentality, diffused power. These are some of the concepts that Foucault uses to explain how this institution called clinic actually came into existence. Okay. He says the date of birth of the clinic was clearly end of 18th century, early 19th century. It is after Industrial Revolution. The clinic actually came in because of an assumption that what is required is not about health, but normality. Okay. Today modern medicine actually talks about the distinction between normal and abnormal, order and disorder. So, who defines what is normal? Is normal something actually a standard universal kind of a notion that is imposed? Yes. The professional knowledge that is generated by the medical system that emerged in the 19th century believed that the signifier, meaning that the medical doctor or medical professionals have ability to understand the disorders or abnormalities in the body without actually the individual person articulating it or telling everything about what happened. Okay. So, there are certain indices, measurable, quantifiable, diagnostic indicators that are developed, where it all can be measured clinically, and based on which whether your normal or abnormal can be deciphered. Okay. So, now this is a very interesting kind of a development. In fact, Foucault actually says that the grammar of medicine changed, the content of medicine changed, the structure of medical knowledge system changed in the 19th century. He says, if you go to a doctor, say 18th century a medical doctor, he would have asked the patient, okay, how are you? He would be interested in actually understanding the entire narrative about your health. Okay. Whereas the 19th century medicine doctor, the grammar actually changed today. He or she today asks, where does it hurt? What's the problem with you? So, it is to identify the problem, it is to identify where the disorder is located. So, each of our anatomical organ is disconnected, fragmented, separated, rather than you look at person as a holistic entity. So, 19th century medicine today actually talks about what is visible, okay, what is clearly manifested, seen, okay, that is more important. So, if there is something that is actually visible kind of a characteristic, that indicates, okay, your disease, and therefore, modern medicine actually talks about compilation of signs and symptoms. When a doctor actually today is asking you a series of questions, what they call in terms of a case sheet, it is not to understand the history of your illness, but it is to understand what are those signs and symptoms that a person actually exhibits at this point of time, by which one could label, okay, signify that this is X disease, this is Y disease. The assumption of medical knowledge system, the 19th century medicine, is that all diseases actually can be cured. Every disease actually has a etiology, meaning there is a cause and there is an effect, and therefore, if you know the cause, you also know the solution for it. Okay. So, in that sense, every disease actually is can be cured, treated. Okay. So, this is where David Armstrong and others also talked about, saying that the moment a medical professional actually came to a conclusion that he or she is capable of understanding all the illnesses, disorders, ill health in a body, the medicine lost its power. 18th century medicine was interested in understanding every single kind of a deviation or every single ailment, because they felt that it is an opportunity for the doctor to understand the unique and distinctive character of the disease. It was an opportunity for the doctor. But today 19th century medicine, where everything is signified, and therefore, the body is passive, body does not have any ability to express itself. So, in a way, the relation between signifier and signified has actually gone to an extent that the professional can actually signify everything that is going on inside the body, because all disorders are located only within the anatomical structure of the physical body. So, everything can be quantifiable, everything can be diagnosed, and that is where the 19th century medicine actually was able to now attract the patients to an institution called clinic, where all the people who are suffering need to come and wait for their turn to actually get cured or get normal. Okay. Foucault asked this question, what is normality? Is normality meaning that body is like a machine, it can be repaired in a workshop and actually brought back to the normal condition? Okay. What if I have certain kind of abnormalities not related to physical kind of conditions? There are a lot of traumatic conditions, there are a lot of conditions which are psychological, psychosocial, and they are related to a lot of emotions, anxiety, and to do with poverty, ill health. How would these kind of social and political factors, which are outside the physical and anatomical body, get accounted for understanding the disease situation. This is the fundamental question I think Michel Foucault raises, and he was trying to explain, saying that the power, what he calls in terms of biopower, meaning that the kind of power that medical professionals today exercise is based on the knowledge, the textual knowledge that is generated, which they believe that through clinical experience, through practice, one could actually interpret and explain the diseases. Okay. So, you can see what he talks in terms of the difference between visible, invisible. Now, if something is not visible, then that can be actually seen through your powerful radiation and other kind of technologies that medical domain has invented itself. So, it can go through the deeper kind of terrain of your anatomical body to your tissues and cells and organs to see whether there is that kind of a normality or not. Okay. And that is the way, and this is where Foucault says that it is nothing but medical gaze. When he says that this gaze, because he says that there is actually a deeper kind of a gaze which actually gives the eye of the doctor, gives him the knowledge inside the body. Okay. So, in a sense he is saying that seeing became more important, seeing actually is more privileged than reading, writing, or actually understanding. Okay. So, the 18th century medicine was also interested in art of listening, art of actually empathetically trying to engage, whereas 19th century medicine is merely interested in actually seeing deeply into the anatomical kind of surfaces to be able to explain, and therefore he says he uses another concept called governmentality. What he means is the state or the government actually from time to time uses the surveillance of the general population to see what are the ways in which people or the biopopulation can be controlled, regulated, systematized. Okay. So, medicine has that kind of a power to decide what is benign, what is good for the individual, what is good for the society, and therefore, the medical professionals actually are competent to regulate and to control this population and save them from abnormal conditions. And this is how the entire knowledge system actually emerged. In fact, Michel Foucault actually was influenced by a philosopher called Jean-Paul Sartre, where he tried to understand some of these marginal kind of people at the margins. Okay, it is about people in the prison, people who are homosexuals, people who are mad and insane. So, he was trying to understand the category of people and empathetically see how they have been classified, labeled by the society as abnormals, and abnormality actually has been defined as opposite of normalcy, and normalcy is defined based on the medical knowledge that actually gained a kind of a privileged status in the 19th century medicine. And this actually can be linked to positive philosophy. With the rise of positivism, with the rise of empiricism, where the entire purpose was, everything has a particular kind of a function, and therefore ascendancy of this particular knowledge system is to regulate the society, is to provide, what is required for the general population. Michael Foucault was making a very pertinent point, saying that 19th century medicine became an instrument to actually understand the individual and the organic kind of disorders. Okay. So, this is where he says that the medical gaze actually was only deeply entrenched in terms of understanding the individual phenomena or the organismic kind of a phenomena. So, he says that there has been actually through this he also is talking about politics of health, where he is saying that it is important for us to understand that there has been a very strong synergy between political ideology and that of medical technology, medical knowledge systems. Okay. So, it is the politics that determined the knowledge that actually got generated within a medical domain. It is not that medicine actually is a kind of a history of knowledge that evolved based on the needs of societies or communities. It is based on certain interest groups in terms of generating that kind of profits, where a clinic or a hospital today becomes a site where the entire ritual or the entire kind of a operation actually takes place, where individual gets completely alienated from the family, from the community, from his own familiar kind of an environment, from his cultural kind of a similarities. So, he becomes completely an alien kind of a object till time he or she actually becomes normal. Okay. And so much so, not simply in terms of healthy individual, but even death actually is completely medicalized. So, by way of this text, what Foucault was trying to talk about was not simply about the professionalization process, the institutionalization of medicine, but he was also talking about medicalization of society. And that is where I think he was making a very important contribution. When he said, how are these categories of people actually classified? Somebody called mad, somebody called sane, somebody called abnormal and normal. Okay. And today it goes to an extent of actually extending that logic. You have today, if children actually are not able to study and focus beyond 5 minutes, or if children actually are not able to do the expected kind of learning in their particular age, there is a label. Okay. They are supposed to be attention deficit hyperactivity syndrome. So, ADHD is one such label. Or if homemakers or housewives today feel depressed with their own kind of condition, okay, there is a particular medical kind of a name or a classification that goes in terms of understanding them as certain depressed kind of categories of people. Okay. So, for everything, certification becomes important. If a particular person is not well and not able to attend to the official duties, or a child is not able to attend the school, medical doctor becomes an important person to certify that he or she actually was not well. So, what happens is the power actually is completely vested in the hands of these professionals, and these professionals actually control the society. So, this is where I think Foucault was trying to explain the change not only between 18th century and 19th century medicine, of course, by taking example of France and it is very important that most of the time we make comparative kind of medical systems in terms of either Chinese medicine or allopathic medicine, or we talk about Ayurvedic and in terms of allopathic medicine. Foucault is trying to bring in the European Western kind of a context simply between 18th and 19th century medicine, to just draw the parallels and how this whole new revolution in medical domain actually occurred in European society over a period of 150 years, okay, which actually became a very dominant kind of a knowledge. And therefore, he is saying that the knowledge that gets generated emanated from one particular kind of a point of view, particular kind of rationality actually decides what is universal rationality. And so, through these, I think he was trying to critically engage with the knowledge systems. Just to sum up what we have actually looked at, in this module, Birth of the Clinic, we were able to actually introduce this classical text written by Foucault and make the relation between knowledge and power, and his important kind of a objective to explain how a clinic as a site actually emerged, which gave rise to medicalization of society. And this is where I think in this module he actually gives a very detailed account, which is actually there in the module, okay, gives a complete kind of a narrative in terms of the 18th century medicine in France, the competitive politics that were available at that point of time, and how church, state, financial agencies, economists and policy makers in France were actually deciding whether family should be the natural site, hospital should be the natural site, and how those discussions and debates were going on in that context. And he moves on into the 19th century saying that, look, the whole new grammar actually has come into existence in the 19th century medicine, individual and anatomy becomes very important. And therefore, I think for sociology students to understand the relation between medicine, health and society, it is very, very pertinent that all of you read this text called Birth of the Clinic, which is fantastic reading, and I hope you will all actually enjoy reading and also will be able to actually see his other kind of books that he wrote or other kind of ideas in terms of history of sexuality or in terms of madness and civilization, and his ideas in terms of diffused power, where he talks about how power is actually not centralized, but it is diffused and decentralized, and how it operates at every micro level. I think all these are very, very fascinating ideas. I hope you will do these readings actually to equip yourselves with this very important kind of a module called Birth of the Clinic. Thank you.